p.m. And if you would like to talk, then please, you can use that chat to message me. And if we have time, I will also do my best to try and facilitate that. And just to say that this event is being recorded and is also live on Facebook. If anyone outside of this Zoom meeting wants to join, you can tell them that on the Terraform Facebook page. So just to tell you a little bit about who will be speaking in the more formal part, of the opening part of today, and to give you some context. As I mentioned, I'm going to pass on to Vijanti, who's the co-director with me at Terraform, who'll give you some background, and then I'll tell you some background about Terraform and some of the work we're doing, and I will then tell you a bit more about the work that is still going forward. Then we'll hand over to Joan Kopczak, who of course was Michael's spouse and Vice President of Terraform's Board of Directors, of course, as well, and did multiple works with Michael, including co-editing a book. And then we have 3 speakers associated more with Michael Sorkin Studios. The first is Makoto Okazaki, who was Michael's partner in Michael Sorkin Studios from 2003 to 17. And then Andre Bovok, who was Michael's partner from 1992 to 2003. And then Jonathan Solomon, who worked with Michael in the pre-Terraform days. Terraform was founded in 2005. And Jonathan worked with Michael from 1999 to 2003 and wrote a wonderful obituary as well that I hope you've all seen, called Without Michael. And I'll also post the link to that in the chat section so all of you can see it. Then we're going to move to speakers that were more directly associated with Terraform and the imprint Urban Research. Tom Angotti, who is, I hope also online. Tom, if you could just message me to confirm that on the chat, who co-edited Zoned Out, which is Urban Research's star book, and one that Michael was very thrilled and proud to publish and be a part of. And that was exactly the type of book that Urban Research was really set up to do, to fight for more beautiful, socially just and equitable cities. And it's a real shining light of the books that we've published thus far. And then Sophia Naru, who was one of the many researchers that have passed through in the opening stages of their career. And, you know, is another star Terraform researcher, a real, you know, sharp, analytic kind of person that was a real joy to have in the studio and work on our various projects. And we'll tell you about her experience working with Michael and at Terraform. And then to Denise Hoffman, who, as well as being a colleague of Michael at City College, did the UR book Waterproofing New York, and was also a contributor to a book I edited with Michael called Open Gaza that will be out later this year. And then finally to our graphic design in chief and director of design, Isaac Gertman, who will also tell you about an archive that we're setting up for Michael and that he's designed. Before handing over to Vijanti, I just want to, on behalf of Michael and Terraform, thank some specific people. First is Cecilia, who we greatly miss, has been a bedrock of Terraform and Urban Research. And we've felt that Cecilia-sized gaping hole since she's left. Trudy, who has always been the kind of foundation of the office, sorting out all of the various demands that were always impossible, but always did her best to meet them. And G, who has been heading up Michael Sorkin Studios most lately, and partnering with Michael on these various incredible adventures. Andrea, I want to just, who's been our research director and working really hard on Homegrown, I will also speak briefly about as one of the ongoing projects. And, I know Andrea, like me, will deeply miss Michael's newspaper clippings from the New York Times that he so delicately would cut out and give to us to talk about the next project or research investigation that we had to do. And finally, just to thank all of the researchers that have worked with Terraform, that have worked with Michael, with all of us, and, really working at this impossible but unrelenting task to produce beautiful, socially just and equitable cities, which is fundamentally what Terraform was all about when Michael was with us, and will be what it's all about as we push it forward. Vijanti.
Thank you, Dean. And once again, on behalf of Terraform, I'd like to welcome all of you for joining us in celebrating our friend, comrade, and fearless leader, Michael Sorkin. To those of you, and there are many on this call who are very old friends of Michael, you may be wondering who we are. Michael lived, as we are all so well aware, especially in these past few weeks. Uh, he lived many lives and across many worlds. He lived those lives and inhabited those worlds with and through us, sharing of himself so generously and expansively that it confounded any conventional sense of time. How could he possibly have had so many friends? And how could he possibly have given each and every one of them so much time and attention and still had some left for all of those many books and articles that he wrote? We're a small but ever expanding collective of terraformers who have conspired to bring some of those lives and worlds together today. And we're amongst the youngest of Michael's many worlds. But we had the good fortune of becoming a node in which all of these other worlds met and collided creatively. Michael and I met only a decade ago at the dinner table of Alexandra Wagner and Lebbeus Woods. And very soon I was inducted into the wonderful and somewhat dizzying world of Michael and later Joan. Ideas, drinks, books, classes, and conspiracies to change the world for the better became a daily routine thanks to Michael. With Michael, everything was ever present and in the moment. He was not only intrigued by the possibility of collaboration across disciplines and practices, he helped me as an anthropologist to inhabit it concretely through Terraform and through my presence in the urban design program that he created at City College. In those ventures and in his dream publishing venture of UR Books, all of his worlds and friends were present up front and center. On March 26, 2020, in the middle of our conversations with Michael, the call dropped and the pen stopped mid-sentence. Knowing that so many of you feel the same, we took the liberty of gathering and inviting you all here. Imagine this is the lair that Michael created in Terraform, which he built precisely for these kinds of conversations to happen on his beige couch or across the bright yellow table at Terraform's studio. To continue the dialogues with Michael and to say thank you for all that he gave us, not least in introducing us to each other, to have and to comfort, to share the profound influence he had through his friendship, and to fill the huge meteor-sized void that he left. These last few weeks have stretched like an endless monsoon season for me. The tears come in torrents and sometimes and recede into a dull drizzle that won't let up. But through all of that incessant pouring, I can still hear Michael's voice ringing out loud and clear urging us to get to work. And that's precisely, as we heard Dean say, is what we expect to do in the coming years. So thank you all for being here. And with that, I'll hand it back to Dean to tell us a bit more about the projects that we have up our sleeves. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijanti. So before I pass to Joan and to everyone else that is obviously mainly going to be looking at the past and remembering our great colleague and supporter, Michael, I also want to say, and as Vijanti said, present some of the work that we're doing going forward. Michael was always about the work, and I got orders literally from the hospital bed to print 500 copies of Open Gaza, 1,000 copies of Nanjing. So I want to say to Michael, they are going forward. We are going forward. We are with you and continuing your everlasting presence. So, Terraform. We have 4 books in production. Open Gaza being the first one that is complete, that was co-edited with Michael and myself. And I'm delighted to say that the American University of Cairo Press have agreed to co-publish this with Terraform, and we're really grateful for that, and are raring to go, and that should be out in October. Mike Davis, there's a co-edited book that will be coming out also later this year, and Daniel Monk at 7 p.m. will be the first of the speakers after this who co-edited that with Michael, will say a few words about that book. Then there's Nanjing Charter, that sponsored by Eric Owen Moss Architects, that will be coming out, and then a book on Gregory Aim. And then, as you can see behind me, there's an image from Homegrown, which was Michael's big magnum opus that Andrea has been steadily working on for the past few years, and with the Terraform team will be making sure that this project that is about how New York can sustain itself within its political boundaries, and this volume of Homegrown focused on food, will be, we hope, brought out next year. And then finally, to say that one of the last projects I was doing with Michael was called Stupid Cities, which is our clunking fist critique of the corporate big Facebook media takeover of our cities that, of course, Michael was outraged by. And I will certainly be carrying that on, and I can see many of the colleagues in that book are here with us today. And we will certainly be carrying that on into the future, into completion. So that is us going forward, carrying Michael's torch forward. And now I'd like to pass to Joan.
Joan is mute, I believe.
What? Am I valuable? Yeah.
Yes.
I tended to think of myself as central to his life, and I must confess that in the last couple of months, I've gone through a process of being denucleated. I see how large and expansive his world is, and it was came as a little. I always knew this, of course, but it was a different experience of it. Early in our relationship, Michael and I traveled to Connecticut with a friend of his I'd not previously met. Part of the reason I agreed to the journey was the fact that the friend, from the years Michael was a graduate student in English at Columbia, was named William Wilson. You're kidding me, I said. No, Michael insisted with a smile, that's really his name. The three of us, that is, if you count the doppelganger friend as only one, the three of us seemed immediately to click. From the time the train left the station, we floated above the ground amid clouds of illusion, assonance, insolence, and unholy holiday. We coerced language to create our own phantasmatic scenarios. Yet toward the end of the trip, I began to detect the existence of a silent short circuit, which appeared to connect William and Michael and bypass me. Unsettling. What's more, the short circuit seemed itself to have short-circuited. I had the sense that something wasn't working. Later, Michael confirmed my suspicion by confessing that the journey was a ruse, devised to show off his new girlfriend to William, whose opinion was being solicited. A signal system by which the opinion would be communicated was thus set up based on these lyrics of a popular song of the time. Knock 3 times on the ceiling if you want me, twice on the pipes if the answer is no. This system formed a short circuit, which short-circuited when, in the end, William refrained from knocking at all. Like Michael, I immediately appreciated the message William sent. The only way he could signal his approval was not by knocking thrice, which would still count me out, but by refusing to participate in the game. This incident has lodged itself in my mind these last several weeks as emblematic of what I found when I found Michael, and what shortly thereafter I signed up for the rest of my life. I married the logic of relations I experienced on the train to Connecticut in the fortunate fall of 1981. The cooperative redesigning of a symbolic universe was for me a thrilling adventure, not a ruse, but the creation of a reality more real for having been miracled up, not in solitude, but with my travel companions. What was refused overtly by William, but also by Michael and me, who honored his refusal, was the exclusion of one of us from the little scenarios we had playfully built. These were built or cobbled together not the way married couples are sometimes said to be able to finish one another's sentences. Sweet, but no thanks. We proceeded more in the manner of the surrealist game of the exquisite corpse, where sentence fragments, rather than being seamlessly sewn together, render visible the cracks or internal incompatibilities between them. What Freud said of men and women, that they are a phase apart psychologically, applies, of course, not to these couples who are so in sync with each other that they need not speak to one another, but to that manner of being in which we betray a capacity to fall out of phase with ourselves and those we properly call our intimates, with whom we need to keep talking. By abandoning the signal system, 3 for yes, 2 for no, William, Michael, and I acknowledged the future of our relation beyond the train ride. This is to say, in part, that marriage to Michael came with an impressive dowry of friends like William, who delighted less in recounting past events than inventing worlds on the spot. It was always about a phantasmatic externalization, a thrusting of self outward in nonstop inventions. Doug Michaels is just one example. He and Michael addressed each other as proton, recognizing in each other a positive force that projected outward. As everyone knows, Michael was extraordinarily generous and kind, but not uncritical. One of the worst criticisms he made of anyone was that he or she seemed to have no inner life. Coming from such an extrovert, This might seem strange, but he was always psychologically sophisticated and thus knew that inner life did not simply precede what could be expressed, but rather the byproduct of expression, of exteriorization. Only he who put himself out was capable of intimacy. This is the logic of relation I learned from Michael over the years, and which has become spectacularly evident to me as I comb through the boxes and boxes of writings, notes, sketches, drawings he produced over the years and rummaged the room upon room of models he's made. I am kept going only by the outpouring of love and admiration his cruel loss has occasioned. I am warmed by the tributes to I am warmed by the tributes to him, many of which acknowledge his voice as one of the most forceful and distinctive in the defense of the rights of the city. It is Michael the writer, the man who wields language as if it were no one else's business, to which many attend. But this attention, while welcome, fails to observe the way his work has crossed over into practice, into exquisite drawings, actual buildings and city plans. Perhaps it is this that causes me to prize a photograph of him taken in Beihai, China, in which Michael alone is drawing quietly, contentedly in this intimate photo of Michael. He still seems to ride high above the ground, to be in the clouds. But here one is allowed to catch a glimpse of the inner life that limned the outward force he always was all along. Dear Michael, I want to say once again, how much I love you and the familiar mystery that bound us together. Yes.
Thank you, Jane. Makoto, could I pass to you?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, John. Okay, I am Makoto. Okay, I have to show something. Okay. I am Makoto. I was a partner of Michael Sorkin Studio from 2003 to 17. Now I'm living in Japan, growing vegetables and making winery and teaching architecture and still designing buildings and cities. This is our Michael Sorkin Studio team in 2017. Michael, in me, Jie, and our graphic designer, Isaac. Michael was great educator, writer, and thinker. We are largely influenced by what he speaks and he writes. But he was born as an architect and designer. He left numerous drawings and sketches for us. Cities from scratch, the word Michael often mentioned, exactly all of our works in MSS always began with his tiny and lovely sketches. Jellyfish building, beautiful. Became hotel in Tianjin. Tiffany lampshade building became tower in Shanghai. I don't know what it is, but it became building in Beijing. rocket in the sky, twin towers in Xi'an. He kept doodling. He sent these sketches from a hotel in London via Skype. Conference Center, Xi'an. He made sketches at the middle of boring conferences. Church in China, lovely. In the cab to CCNY, he drew a house in Australia. In his travel, he drew whenever he came up the idea and sent them up to us in New York City. And we developed into architecture. City of Science, 2015, he always started sketching immediately after we printed the aerial image of Google. He never read the programs, just started doodling. Then he made such beautiful stuff.
Hi, Makoto.
And
Makoto,
he already knew what was right answer for the development.
Makoto,
Yes,
are you showing images?
yes.
Because we are still in the first slide. If you might want to actually move away from the full screen and maybe just advance the slides, because we are just still in the first picture.
Only first picture?
Now we are in 31, but we have missed all the other ones.
Okay, so
Sorry about that, but I thought it was important to say.
something. So, and this is the first one. Okay, this is a jellyfish building, his sketch. This one, Tiffany lampshade building. This one became Beijing building. Rocket in the sky became Xi'an building. This is a conference center for Xi'an, I think. Church. House in Australia. Beautiful. Very detailed. Okay, this is City of Science. He always started sketching immediately after we printed aerial image from Google. He never read programs, just started doodling. And then he made such beautiful stuff. And he already knew what was right answer for the development. This is our final proposal. He kept speaking to us, think about Klimt, Chuck Close, Mondorian, and the landscape view from airplane he looked. This is his ideal city image, very pretty, beautiful. Do you feel Klimt? Okay, let's go quick. He didn't like Thai. This is our proposal for China's new capital city, Chongqing, in 2017. Chinese government invited 10 architect teams from the world to design their new capital city. We were invited. We printed aerial side view from Google for Michael, and we also and always printed Manhattan map with site boundary in same scale. Manhattan grid was our ruler. His first sketch, first inspiration was very funky. This was Plan B. This is another lovely inspiration. Another day, he seems to like Plan B. started giving details. Beautiful. Close to our final plan. This is our final plan. This is a study for open space structure. Became this. Michael. Again, cities from scratch, from his sketch. In order to get this, of course, we pour tons of time, energy, and labor. We had to study so many aspects from history to technology. Our team never slept. But we began with his sketch on scratch paper. We could not go anywhere without it. Our final plan for Shongan, unfortunately, we couldn't win. A year later, Chinese government presented their final master plan, which was this. Are you familiar with this? Looks so familiar for me. This is the Chinese government official master plan now, but they never mentioned about Michael's name. So I decided I will call this city as Sorkin in memory of Michael Sorkin. Michael, give us your sketch. We together will design steady state of heaven. Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Makoto.
Thank you.
Thank you, Makoto.
Is that photograph?
Thanks, Makoto. Andre?
Yes, hi, Andre. So yes, I was with Michael from 1993, I guess, through, I last saw him mid-February. And what I remember from that meeting, so we, as usual, sat on this couch, chatted about this and that. Well, not much about politics. We kind of, we don't talk this. Well, we actually, as I remember, I don't talk to him much. We didn't talk much. We drew a lot on top of each other's sketches. That's what I remember. But the last phrase, which is in my memory from this mid-February, was, Andre, don't get old. All right, great. Thank you, Michael. And I thought about this. Well, I mean, how not to get old? There isn't actually the answer, which Michael doesn't give me, but didn't tell me, but I was supposed to guess it by myself, I guess. It's about, well, you say keep on working. I mean, don't stop working, don't stop fighting for what you believe in. And well, so here's the advice and the recipe how to go with that. So yes, so like it's to everybody, don't just get old, don't lay down, don't sit down, keep on working until the end. And it's just like it's with this virus. I don't know how we suffered it. Also with Michael's departure, the saddest thing of all. So yeah, I was like speaking with Joan when Michael was in the hospital. There was no way to come and see him. I mean, this was like the most ridiculous thing, like virus or what this government can do to you. I mean, I wouldn't mind to get sick, but well, I do mind not to see him when I could. And that's I don't know. This is like really the worst thing about this. Yeah, and yes, I still don't. Well, we spend some time with Joan now, and it's really difficult to believe that he's not around yet. So we went to his like our favorite spot, this 12 chairs in this what is it? Not Eric Street. I forgot what is it. It's like this downtown. 12 chairs, and they do take out. So we took what we usually had with Michael. It's all there, and it's like it's really the feeling that he is somewhere around the corner, and it's unbelievable. Yes, and well, on my memory, I don't have much of like memory, just one big memory, one big 10 years. I mean, as Makoto said, we lived in the studio for like, well, 10 years, like maybe less, maybe 9 years. I physically lived there for maybe half a year in Michael Sorkin's studio at some point. It was like, it's not a family, it was a home, studio as a home. That was the concept, I guess. That's why I hear right now that, yes, it's this whole memories about Michael sending sketches like from wherever he is, and you just take the sketches as a conversation which never stopped. For me too, I seriously, this is my thing. I understand that you all, to books and writing and reading. I don't know. I'm not that kind of a person, but we did communicate through sketches all the time. It's all the time. It was every project was sketch over sketch over sketch over sketch, and like finally you arrive to some result would be the complex, gigantic model or like some colorful drawing. And that was a process. And yeah, I wish we had some more of the scientific type of thing, which arrived later actually with you guys. But it started as like, for me, it was a pure art. For Michael, it was too. So like urban design as an art form, yes, it had some kind of like this layers of complexity. But it's like colors, like for, yeah, you treat these layers as colors. Like I don't know. For me, it is about colors, and yeah. So nowadays, so all right. So we're doing this, working on Michael's archive, and thank you guys, everybody who is in Terraform and Makoto specifically, and everybody. The archives in Michael Sorkin Studio and Terraform are in perfect shape. Just that you can't like wish for more. I know that the drawings are like in the studio, so we looked at all those drawings and the tubes. Yes, so not all of them, but I saw all the tubes of drawings there, like sketches. It's just abundance on. I don't know what to do with them, so probably we'll have to pick up some which can be used for like exhibits or for publications. But yeah, so there are tons of sketches, and they're all in pretty good shape actually. What I cannot say about the models, I mean, we collected in the studio like 12 this animal housing, like it's early work of Michael Sorkin, and actually this is Kent Hikida. So I spoke with him a couple of days ago. So he was the first Michael's partner, I guess, like, or worked with Michael. It was from, I think it's late '89, and for the next 2.5, 3 years. Yeah, I wish we had him on this like group meetings too. He was extremely instrumental. If you remember this animal houses, this is like Kent Hikida and Michael Sorkin. So I'm issuing the brief for the model makers like end of this week for the restoration of these models. So I have this existing condition, the sizes, dimension, well, not weight yet, but there will be weight so that we can communicate what's wrong with this model. Some of them are, well, in okay shape, the other ones are really poor quality. So I here, I don't know if I could use a help. I could use any help I can in trying to like restore these models. It's again, it's 12 very early Michael Sorkin model, which like few, I guess, are done by his hand, like some city model. I remember that strange the bandsaw we had in the studio, not the one which is there right now, the black one, but we had this bandsaw. This is original Michael's bandsaw where he did his first urbanogram. We managed to enter the storage space with Michael's again. So we have this crates of Wheat City model and 10 square meter of like physical model. The drawings are all in perfect condition. Models need some restoration. Yes, that's my idea. Now we discuss it with John, and so just to first we need to find a home for not the first, the second thing. We will eventually need to find a home for the model and for the materials for the drawings. Maybe not one, but many homes it's interesting. I heard from Joseph Giovannini, so Michael should not probably look for homes in schools like with this work, but some outside of the school. So it's a Metropolitan Museum Center for architecture in Canada. So we'll be contacting them. But before that, it's probably makes sense to have this 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many, what in general, maybe several traveling exhibits. We have enough material. It's enough of material, enough of sketches, enough of models to send like 3 exhibits right away to travel around the globe.
Yeah, and we really we can't wait to see that traveling exhibition, and please everyone help Andre and all of us at Terraform to go on. Sorry to cut you off, Andre. I'm just a bit concerned.
Well, no problem. Yes, I'm pretty much done. So these are these things which can be done for Michael. Yes, it's apart from I understand this is one of the most important thing to publish his books, like, and keep on publishing and don't stop publishing and just work along his lines until, well, so don't get old. And the second thing it's equally important is to, of course, like to continue with an exhibiting. So we help Michael's legacy. No, it's not legacy, it's his thing. I mean, I see this this Makoto showed the jellyfish house building, and it reminds me from the very beginning, the shroom housing, animal housing, everything housing. It's like he has the whole bunch of this housing projects. It became a line of his work, and so just keep it going and let him travel around the world. Well, I don't mind school, so like just keep on going. We have lots of videos. It can be like virtual lectures of Michael Sorkin in any university you wish. So, well, this is a doable plan, and nothing's definitely like an undoable. But yes, we need to
Absolutely.
work on it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Jonathan, can I call on you?
Of course. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, everybody. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Andre.
Thank you.
You haven't changed a day. You haven't gotten old. I met Michael in 1999, and I worked at the studio for about the next 4 years, on and off. First on The Next Jerusalem, which began as a conference and then became a book, and was of course also a design project, like everything, was also a design project in the studio. And later on other projects, such as the University of Chicago master plan. And we remained close, even after I left the kind of immediate circle of influence. Michael was a witness at my wedding in 2005 to Yuki Sakamoto, who I'd met through Andre. He was a tireless professional reference. And he was more than a friend, a kind of in loco parent. My father and Michael had been friends. And after my father passed away in 2005, Michael, well, like my father, Michael was also a male Jewish architect who was about 30 years older than me, so it made imprinting a little easier. But also, Michael was not only capable of, but seems to enjoy practicing unconditional love, an act that is so extraordinarily rare in the world, in the professional world of architecture. Not just to me, but to so many others, apparently, that it made it impossible not to treat him as someone who was maybe parent-like. I know that there's so many people who have so much to say this evening, so I'm just going to read briefly from a little remembrance that I wrote about my time in the studio with Michael, and it's a excerpt. So if you want to read the whole thing, Dean said he'd share it later. It includes a kind of a colorful description of Andre, for which I can only apologize in advance. During that time at Michael Sorkin's studio, we worked in large hand drawings in colored pencil, first on tracing paper, then on Mylar, and large relief models in plasticine. Usually, there were several of these for each project at different scales. The work was directed by Michael and completed by a small team overseen by Andrei Vovk, a charismatic Russian emigre and Michael's business partner for a decade, who would smoke cigarettes, drink deli coffee, and mumble directions in heavily accented English. The oils, pencil shavings, cigarette ash, and coffee stains formed a sticky film across all surfaces in the studio, which Michael would occasionally make a show of whooshing through with Windex and a paper towel. This was never effective. Layers of dust would settle, only to be folded in by attempts to brush them away. Out of this viscous miasma would unfurl drawings of great complexity, beauty, and most importantly, indeterminacy. Unlike architectural drawings, which communicate precise, fixed relationships, the drawings that emerged from Michael's studio revealed new possibilities every time you looked at them. At a time when architects interested in animate form were producing boring blobs, the studio's drawings seemed alive. Figures wandered across plazas, planted platforms meandered across rivers, and willowed paths wafted between buildings. While other architects seeking to shock the discipline out of complacency left life out of their work, what emerged from the studio was immediately graspable, allowing for an empathy with the tiny bodies moving through them, relations and not just forms. Fascinatingly, the drawings and models were also literally animated. Michael was focused on process over form, the space between the fish and the wiggle, in his words, comfortably confident in the indeterminate. So plasticine was constantly reshaped over months or even years as projects dragged on, from the few representations made for a competition, publication, or occasional client. One dome atop the green machine bubbled into 3, then 5. On the drawings, pencil rubbed easily off the mylar. Hands followed hands, repairing and revising as they roamed. If I had to choose one word to embody Michael, it would be propinquity, a word I often find I have to define when I use it. Like Michael's work in any media, this performance of definition establishes a space for ongoing conversation, rather than insisting on a single meaning. Michael used it in the title of a book he edited with his wife, Joan Kopchak, Giving Ground, The Politics of Propinquity, in 1999. In the introduction, adapted from his 1997 Raoul Wallenberg lecture at the University of Michigan, Traffic in Democracy, Michael writes, propinquity, or neighborliness, is the ground and problem of democracy. This would indeed become the problem of our time. Propinquity was at the core of Michael's deepest held values and his most popular critiques. It fueled his strong commitment to leftism at the same time as it animated the urgency with which he called for authoritarian solutions to climate change. Michael never lost confidence in neighborliness to make the neighborhood. When I think about how I can come back to Michael, now in this time when chance encounters are suddenly deadly, it is this confidence that I remember. I last spoke to Michael in January. I can imagine how frustrated he must have been when he became ill to be forced to hold still, to stay indoors, to give a pass on propinquity. I'm sure he found it especially frustrating that COVID-19, a disease spread through neighborliness, would do him in. I imagine he was furious at critics that blamed the density of cities for the epidemic's spread. And I realized that I am too, and that I should do more about it. Even when Michael and I weren't proximate, we were close. So I prefer not to think of Michael as gone. Like the mornings I would get to the studio early, well before anybody else. His world bright with light, without him, but electrified by his potentials. I would rather imagine that he is just yet to arrive and get to work. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Jonathan. And just to say that I put Jonathan's wonderful tribute in the chat, the link to it, so you'd be able to get it there. Tom, can I pass over to you?
Sure. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes, okay. Comrade urbanists. When I started teaching at CUNY about 20 years ago, after I had been at Pratt Institute in planning, I started getting emails addressed to comrade urbanists. And Michael was seeding the revolution in a variety of disciplines across the City University of New York, asking us to send him our class schedules so that he could send his students to us, and asking us to send our students to him. And so when I think of Michael, I think of Michael as a comrade, and he truly was in more than his usual missives. But he was provocative in his work. He sought to stir the waters, to defend urbanity where it was being attacked, whenever it's been attacked. And he wasn't just an architect or designer. He was an urbanist. I think of him fondly as the man who walked around the neighborhood of Jane Jacobs and carried her spirit with him. We had many long discussions about what was going wrong in New York City. And I remember only once did we, each of us, praise Rudy Giuliani, of all people, because he, after 9/11, proposed leaving Ground Zero empty as a memorial to the people. So this gave me a window into the spiritual feeling behind the intellectual. He understood that the city was much more than buildings and much more than the association among people. And so the other thing I really appreciated over the years was his sly wit, as everybody has noticed. And you can see it in the multiple volumes that I've received from Terraform that I still think are tremendous provocations. The Helsinki book, Letters to the Leaders of China. The book he co-edited with Sharon Zukin on Ground Zero after 9/11. One of my last conversations with Michael was about our rebel urbanists. He, for a long time, had been a member of Architects, Designers, and Planners for Social Responsibility. And I have been one of the leaders of Planners Network. And Michael was very concerned because these organizations were stumbling through without the deep resources that the professional, the AIA and the Planners Association had. And so we had a long discussion about how we can kick some life back into the professional radicals. And so he was as much an urbanist as he was an architect, because he cared that we continue to raise our voices. And the final thing I wanted to say was, as Dean had mentioned, the book Zoned Out, Race Displacement and City Planning in New York City. When I came to Michael, I said, Michael, listen, I'm working with a group of activists in New York. We've been fighting the city's rezonings for big real estate development. And a lot of these fights are actually successful, and they've slowed things down. We think that we've done, along with Sam Stein and Sylvia Morris, who may be on this call, we put together a collection of books, and Phil DiPaolo, a collection of articles and chapters about what's wrong with zoning, why it's there in order to promote real estate development, and how it has the result of displacing communities of color. And I said, Michael, you know, if we did this book fast and got it out fast, I bet you there will be hundreds and thousands of community activists that will scoop it up, and it will reinforce the work they're doing. It will help us to inform their work with facts about how planning works, how planning doesn't work, and what's wrong with it. Well, it came out in record time. And as Dean was saying, it's a bestseller. And I'm not so much concerned about that. I'm mostly concerned and pleased with the fact that it's changed the political trajectory of rezonings under the current administration. And they've stopped doing them because they're starting to lose too many. So I want to thank my comrade urbanist for his solidarity in this struggle.
Thank you, Tom. Sophia, can I
Thanks,
pass
Dean.
to you?
Yeah. Yeah, so I want to take a few minutes that I have to talk about Michael as a mentor and a teacher. I was fortunate enough to be taken in by Michael to work as an intern for Terraform the summer after my sophomore year of college as a sociology undergrad and a student organizer with zero architecture or design experience. But since then, I've been lucky enough to be able to stay within the Terraform orbit ever since. Michael taught me a great deal about cities, how to study them, how to write about them, how to design them. But above all, through his humor, his joy, his compassion, and through his indignation towards the world, he taught me that in spite of the horrors and injustices of today, cities are amazing because we, the public, the people that live, work, and play in cities are amazing. And if we collectively are as special as a 20-minute walk from home to work proves us to be, then relentlessly fighting for a just, equitable, beautiful, fun, weird, fantastic future is always worth it. That was sort of the big takeaway from my time with Michael. But my time at Terraform was defined by an open door policy. The days would start with Michael walking up to your desk, planting himself next to you and running through his notes and sketches from the night before. And if you were lucky, you can get him to sit with you for an hour or so to flesh out ideas. And we'd also inevitably gossip and scheme. But most of the time, though, you had to chase him down as he ran around the office, often barefoot, leaving unsolicited notes and half-baked ideas at your desk. And it was just pure joy and fun working day in and day out at that office. But sometimes it wasn't always easy. There were a few times where Michael and I disagreed on the fundamental points on the projects I was working on. And our frustrations with each other were tangible to the point where we'd avoid each other for a few days. I decided to spend my days not doing my work necessarily, the to-do list that I had that he gave me, but researching ways to prove him wrong. And he'd spend some nights after I had left or mornings before I arrived, leaving notes or sketches in my books and papers, re-articulating his points within the context of the arguments he was noticing on the page. And to this day, I still think Michael was wrong about a lot of the points we bickered over. But I would bet $5 that he still thinks he's absolutely right. But even through his stubbornness, he never gave up on engaging with me and my ideas and pushing me to do better. He always asked questions and he wanted and needed our advice. Everyone who worked at Terraform could spend countless afternoons and even many Saturdays on Michael's sofa talking about the next idea, the next project, and again, the latest gossip. Michael had 1,000 spectacular ideas for what I could do with my life. And they were mostly outlandish and grandiose. And he often wrote them out to me after these couch talks and emails that were often subject lined PS. And I think he wrote them down and sent them to me because he wanted me to know that he trusted in all that I could do. And now he had evidence that he had put me to work. Michael cared, he supported and indulged me and countless others unconditionally, as has been mentioned time and time again on this Zoom. He simply couldn't contain his excitement in thinking about all we'd be able to do together. After Michael's passing, I turned to a Marshall Berman essay that Michael shared with me once I then received notice of Michael's passing. The essay was part of an urban research book called Adventures in Modernism, Thinking with Marshall Berman, that the Terraform team had gifted to me at the end of my first summer. As Michael and I parted ways the last time that summer, he told me to read the first chapter and he said, if you don't get it, don't come back. The first chapter was Marshall's essay, Emerging from the Ruins, about the destruction in the South Bronx with the Bronx Expressway and the fiscal crisis of the 70s, amongst other things like the Bible, which Marshall liked to talk about a lot. And I assume a few of you listening into this have read it, so I won't summarize it, or you can buy the ebook. But I'll leave us with the last paragraph that now seems prophetic on Marshall's end. And it goes like this. New York has a tradition of great dreams. Its herbicidal ruins felt like a cosmic mockery of them all. And yet, by the end of the 20th century, our cities of ruins turned out to be a place where people coming from everywhere were working together. Even as New York fell apart, it rose. People looked into each other's eyes, learned to know each other face to face. If they could get that far, what else can they build? I guess the idea is simple. We can and we will emerge from the ruins to create something beautiful with our cities because people are inherently good and have the potential to do amazing things together. The sentiment is as Michael as it gets, and as Marshall as it gets, of course. But these days, when considering our daily reality, it's not hard to feel deeply insulted in regard to this idea, especially in consideration of the fact that we're forced to celebrate Michael's life through this virtual space that has been named a privacy disaster and is a communications corporation's now best-selling product, which is not very Michael. But I like to think about this idea, how this idea was given to me by Michael and my Terraform family, who supported any and all of my intellectual whims, who provided, as V said to me recently, a place to walk in and out freely, an office to learn how to be stubborn in our values and relentless in our fight for justice. And if I think about that, then I can only find great comfort in all of us gathered virtually together for and because of Michael. And I could only find hope and courage in this idea that if we can get this far in these times, maybe when this is all over, we can build something fitting for Michael's trust and love in all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Sophia. That was very nice. Denise.
Hi, I'm going to read. Among the many qualities Michael had that I admire and do not myself possess was his ability to enrapture listeners with perfect phrases that conspired to be both witty and piercing and seemingly effortless. He told me once when I was whining about how hard I find it to be clear that actually his finesse was the product of long hours of obsessive craft, that he ruminated over diction and syntax, sometimes in lieu of sleep. At the time, I wondered if he exaggerated in order to encourage me to more rigorous editorial practices, although I never forgot the comment because it helped. And even as I write this, his words feel both weighty and uplifting. Michael had a rare form of sympathy, not as is commonly used to mean pity, but as common feeling, understanding. In all of the memorializing, I've read a lot about Michael's use, some said overuse. I admit that on occasion I said overuse of the term comrade. He would address us all, faculty, colleagues, his office staff, contributing authors, students, and friends as comrades. And with his acerbic wit and eye for society's logical fallacies, I think many people interpreted the term to mean co-conspirator, partners in resistance. And we were with Michael in that. And also, I think to Michael, we were more than mere allies. Michael's casual comment about our common struggle to shape words into communal meaning felt more like another definition of comrade, companion. And here I think not of secular humanist siblings in arms, but of the messy way that Donna Haraway describes companion species, where companionship is a kind of visceral respect for species which do not exist as a collection of like entities, but are instead a multi-species crowd. Haraway was talking about human, non-human partnering, but I think buried in there was a thought for humanness that Michael would appreciate. The act of relating explodes the boundedness of beings. Haraway says that such partners do not pre-exist their relating. The partners are precisely what come out of the inter and intra-relating of fleshly, significant, semiotic, material being. That is a mouthful of words to describe the root of Michael's profound generosity and deep loyalties. To him, my writing frustration was his frustration, while also being wholly physically mine, and to be respected with sympathy, at the same time that his view of what I was trying to say and my view of it, which were often divergent, entangled us in an expanded field of relations, like a web made by spiders as species, not as things. On Saturdays, I would sometimes stop by Terraform to find him literally behind glass, at his desk writing, simultaneously connected and isolated. There he inhabited a perfectly ambiguous state of exterior interiority. Across the threshold with the door closed, I, in common with many of you listening this evening, was at once inside a cozy personal enclave and at the same time propelled outward to absorb ideas, opportunities, and new companions of our species. Monica Bertolino, Carol McMichael Reese, Maria Villalobos, and countless others are my companions through Michael's construction, just as Isaac Gertman, Andrea Johnson, my son Theo, and other terraformistas I introduced to him were not only employed, but enmeshed. We are comrades, companions, we share. Michael's adventures in intra and interrelating were messy and sometimes transgressive. The crossing lines of social formatting or disciplinary boundaries was never a mission that he was on. He was just not containable. Terraform embodies that brilliant indeterminism. Joan is valiant for committing to sustaining it through projects and processes incomplete. And we all now face the challenge of proving that as partners that did not pre-exist our relating through Michael, we can extend beyond him as this fantastic web.
Thank you, Denise. Dear Comrade Isaac.
Okay, hi everyone. I started working with Michael in 2005 on the book Against the Wall, and have floated in and out of his universe since, but was really lucky to sort of join in with Terraform as the urban research imprint started, and have been working on all of those books and also supporting Sorkin studio projects and things like that. And after hearing everyone's stories, I mean, I share so many of the same experiences of Michael with all of you. And I think that like why he and I got along so well is that I was just always up for anything. And he would just write me an email and say like, hey, I want to do this thing. Do you want to do it? And I'd say, yeah, we would do it. And it was always the funnest work that I had on my plate. Why I am talking now is actually to talk about the web archive that we've started working on. So I'm going to share my screen and browse a website in front of you. So The working site is up now at michaelsorkin.info if you'd like to take a look. But here we are looking to collect as much as we can and share it with the world. And so we have a landing page with some images. We would love to collect whatever images of Michael that you have. In the navigation, there is both the last lecture, many remembrances of Michael. We've been cataloging them extensively. I'm gonna move my page down a little bit so I can navigate. The Zoom thing is in the way. The writings we plan to collect for now, we have this page from Citizen Magazine. Thank you, Julio. As a placeholder, just to start to share some of the pieces of his work. We have started to comb through YouTube and other sources to collect all of his fantastic lectures so that they're all in one place. And also his extensive CV. And then we also have links to all of the work of Terraform and Sorkin Studio and UR, and then also a tab to donate. I think we'll want to coordinate with Andre more, but as we get the drawings and other pieces, I feel like we'll plan to populate the site with more content, but we would also love your input as to other things that the site could or should have. This, I envision will be a work in progress for a really long time. And so we appreciate your input and support. So it's michaelsorkin.info.
Great, thank you, Isaac. And I'll share that in the chat as well. Great. So now just to turn to the people outside the schedule onwards, I've just put the link and just say Anat and Spira, just so your messages, and if anyone else wants to talk, please message me and I'll add you onto the list. So to Daniel.
Thank you, Dean. I'll be brief because I know that there are others who want to share reflections as well. Michael and I were editing a book together when he passed away. His last message to me, written in really about 36 hours before he passed away, was an exhortation to finish it. It's called Between Catastrophe and Revolution, Essays in Honor of Mike Davis. It includes what I think is Michael's last written work. It'll be out in the fall. So now a collection of essays originally intended as a tribute to another comrade's contribution to radical thought will have to do double duty as a testament to the impulse of solidarity that created it. We, the authors and the editors, continue heartbroken but undeterred. Michael's legacy will continue in our work and in Terraform's, and I think in yours, because it was always premised upon a logic of collective action, that is to say, of shared work with others, without in any way trying to diminish the importance of Michael's unique contributions to critical scholarship on metropolitan existence, or of his fantastic invention of a kind of zoomorphic urbanism. The premise and the promise of his work with people like me, or with community boards, or with all of you, has always been that true collaborative labor is form constitutive. It participates in creating the very politics it wishes to bring into being. So in a historical moment when the vultures of shock doctrine politics are already seeing the disease that took Michael from us as an opportunity to also take away any understanding of the fact that another way of life might be possible, I draw inspiration from the way that Michael modeled friendship as a replicable, teachable, and ultimately triumphant social force. Thanks.
Thank you, Daniel. Is Martin online? No, okay. Leslie Loco? Okay. Teddy and Fona? Teddy and Fona, turn it over to you.
Yes, Michael and John introduced us to the word propinquity. It was illuminating to us then, and we wondered how we had ever lived without it. And yet now, somehow, with Michael gone, we feel we have never in our lifetimes needed this concept more. At bottom, propinquity summarized Michael's determination to be together in space as essential to democracy. He was a coyote of urban justice, a trafficker in public culture, one made of equitable linkages, connections, flows, and exchanges.
That he called us all comrades, all of us, was a gesture of radical respect and a shared imperative that we're in this together, and that together we need to call it for what it is, expose it, resist it, aspire beyond it. For Michael, architecture was the political tool to change the narrative, to visualize injustice, and to spatialize rights.
He also insisted we challenge our own cliches and platitudes, our banal ways of practicing, that we keep ourselves in check. He inspired an entire generation of architects and urbanists, us included, to reflect critically on our own practices.
We need his mischievous grin today, his infectious optimism and energy, illuminating the potential of everything from the rubble of conflict, injustice, and alienation. He would probably tell us right now in a renewed key that we need to retool ourselves, that the COVID crisis, which took him, might be the strange harbinger of something better, exposing the idiocy of selfishness during a collective crisis, of isolationism, exposing the catastrophe of freedom thinking and divestment from public goods.
Perhaps from this moment, a new public consciousness can emerge, Michael's vision, which, whether manifested in writing, sketches, or the echo of his words, will always be dedicated to an architecture of social proximity. We love you, Michael. Your spirit breathes in everything we do and everything we are. Thanks.
Thank you, Teddy and Fona. And so wonderful to see you for the first time after this long communication. If you don't mind, I'm actually going to go to Nasser and Yara because they're in the UK and it's getting late. Nasser and Yara, are you online? I think we already missed them. Okay. Julio.
Hello, everybody. I'll just keep it very short. And thank you for inviting me to say a couple words. As we have heard today, Michael encompasses many universes. For all of us at City College, he was just not the urbanite beacon of academia and civilization we would follow, like Lenin's jumping into the wonderful abyss of his stories, but he was the model of humanity, of just conjugality. He was, and he is the person that we look to on our daily occurrences to emulate and to just share his shared love for life and from friendships. And I think what I would miss the most besides his ideas is this human quality that he had and was so present. At the end of every faculty meeting, we would be looking to him to end the faculty meeting with a fantastic speech that would be both humorous, uplifting, and political. And that's what I would miss more about him. And every faculty meeting now that we will have, I will look back to those thoughts and smirk and smile and continue on. I also was very lucky to share my office, his office with mine for the past few years. And again, what I take from those moments was not necessarily his sheer brilliance and his steadfast dedication to the city and to aesthetics, but just his humanness. You know, he would come by every morning, we would grab a cup of coffee. He would always speak so fondly about Joan and the last dinner and the places that they would go for her birthday. And so that is gone now, but those memories are so strong that I so value them. I came into Michael's life with a tremendous blast. I had just joined City College, and I had asked him to just try to say a few words about something that I had published that was modest about my work. And he showed up at the book opening and proceeded to read about 16 pages that he had written that were so overwhelming and they were so generous. It was that, I think, that one memory that has made my life so much fuller. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to Michael. Anyway, thank you for having me. Sorry.
Thank you, Julia. I'm trying to be fair to everyone, especially those that are based in time zones where it's getting very late. So please let me know if the time is stretching. Eva in London, I'm going to turn to you now.
Hello, thank you, Dean. I met Michael probably, as many of the thousands of people who are not tonight with us, by reading his works, by reading his books. I probably read everything he had published. I was a student at Princeton in 2005 when Rafi Siegel, that I know he's here, and also Mario Wandelsonas invited him for our final review. As someone who admired Michael from the distance, I probably was just designing for him. And I was just waiting for him to come to see my work and to have a conversation, eye on eye, with someone who I knew was looking into the world with the lens that I believe any architect should have. For whatever reason, Michael couldn't come that day. And I was, as a self-entitled student, extremely annoyed. So I found his email address and I wrote him an email and I said, hey, how do you dare not showing up? I will just spend the last month working for you. I want to show you my project. And he said, well, you know, I had some things to do. Why don't you come this week in New York? I'm doing a talk with a person that you would love to meet that is called Eyal Weizman. We are like talking about some of his work and you might learn something. So of course I took the train and I went to Princeton. I went to New York to the Gramercy Park club, and I saw Michael, and I didn't introduce myself because obviously, as much as I look that I'm not shy, I'm terribly shy. And then of course I met Eyal and the work, and that was an introduction to an entire world that now is also part of my close universe. From that moment on, Michael then became someone who I would sometimes write, but also from my time in New York directing a storefront for art and architecture, Michael was already part of that institution from the times from its founding, but also with Sarah and all of my previous predecessors. Michael was always a supporter and a critic, and everyone here knows how incredibly generous and incisive he was in making his ideas being heard. One of the last dinners I had in New York City, before I left to where I am now in London, I'm actually just next to the Architectural Association. We were at the house of Alexandra Wagner, and we said that before, and she has been, I think, an incredible figure in Michael's life as well. And in that last dinner, Michael came to me and said, you know, there is probably something that you don't know. Many years ago, I was offered the job that you are about to take. And there is not one day that passes that I do not think how architecture would have been different and how my life would have been different if I would have taken that job. And of course, this is the kind of responsibility and the real burden that we all carry within our own offices, our own publishing houses, or within our institutions that we direct. But now being for 2 years here at the AA, sometimes when I have to think about difficult decisions or important questions, I always think and wonder, what would Michael think? And this is, I think, something that all of us here will carry, that is, what would Michael think? That voice of consciousness and awareness about what is that is not only ethically right, but just simply necessary. And I think I'm going to read something that he wrote in 2014 when he was offered an honorary degree here at the AA, and he couldn't come, that I think it's kind of beautiful. And so he said, I truly wish I could be there with you now to personally express my gratitude for this great honor. At the moment, I'm sitting in my third studio review of the week in New York and could use a drink. Being invited to join the membership of the AA has very special meaning for me. As many of you might know, I had the opportunity to become chairman some years ago, and for personal reasons was actually declining. This is surely the greatest regret of my life, and for years I was unable even to visit London, never mind to pass through the portals of number 36. Ever since I discovered this marvelous place at the summer sessions of 1971, it was a dream to be part of it, and it was a great gift to have had my first teaching experience there a few years later. The AA changed me and the way I look at architecture. And I will, to the end of my days, lament the fact that I could not repay this debt by helping change it with my full energies. Perhaps the future will hold other opportunities. At any rate, I now once again feel quite comfortable in the bar and hope to see many of you there in the near future. First round on me. Again, my deep thanks. You can't imagine how happy this makes me. Cheers. And to that, I cheers for him. I think probably many of us will remember Michael, but what I think is more important is that the future generations will also remember him. Joanne, my deepest gratitude and all my condolences, and thank you for organizing this. So that's it.
Thank you, Eva. Sarah Herder, are you online? Sarah?
Yeah, hello, sorry. Thank you all so much for organizing this and bringing us together in some way. I think that's been one of the hardest things, is being so far apart and alone in thinking about Michael for almost 2 decades, since the night I met him in the West Village with the All Weissman for dinner. Michael has played many roles in my life: mentor, teacher, advisor, confidant, co-conspirator, and friend. He's one of the first people I would turn to at pivotal moments, be them difficult or happy, professional or personal, to seek advice, share ideas, gossip, plot and plan, to get things moving and make things happen. His fierce intelligence and wit, his unwavering commitment to ideas and the motley crew around the world, brave enough to have them, and his ability to rally the troops and take action are unmatched. He has been a vital force in architecture culture, an advocate for the city, working tirelessly to instrumentalize all parts of design to make the world more just, more beautiful, and more accessible for all. Now, trying to make sense of the time and world we find ourselves in, I find that I miss him and need him more than ever. In the past weeks, I've come to see and feel all the ways in which he will always be with us, urging us on to fight the good fight, get into a little trouble, and settle for nothing less than what our wildest imaginations and our deepest convictions can muster. In honor of Michael, I look forward to a future of fighting, laughing, and dreaming alongside of all of you to change things, to make things better, to tell it like it is. Together, we must make him proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Howard Rodman.
Yes, I met Michael in, if memory serves, 1976. We were both working for 7 Days, which was a national radical weekly news magazine. Not sure how national it was. It certainly didn't appear every week, and so sometimes it wasn't even a magazine. The collective, I think, decided that Michael and I should share an office because we were sort of cultural Marxists, and I think as such we're looked upon a little bit askance. So they shoved us in an office together, I think, so that we wouldn't contaminate everyone else. And you know, at 10 in the morning we hadn't met, and by 3 in the afternoon I knew we were going to be friends for life. I feel deeply fortunate to have shared some of that time in Michael's life. I feel deeply fortunate and very moved to have been present at his courtship of Joan, a romance which continued and continued and grew as we watched it. And really enjoyed the writing collaborations that we did for The Village Voice. Our lives took different paths, but one of the things that was constant for me was, of all the people I knew, the gap between the life we wanted to lead, the life we knew we should lead, and the life we led, those gaps were imperceptible with Michael and so large for the rest of us. And whenever I have choices to make, I think of what Michael would have done in the same situation. I don't always follow it. I don't think he would have wanted me to always follow it. But I think I am one of the large legion of people whose life in small and very large ways has been influenced by the presence and example of our comrade. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. And to James Wines. James, are you online?
Unmute. Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Over to you.
But I wasn't expecting to be a speaker tonight. But I will say a few words because I've been very moved and touched by everything that everyone else has said. I guess I'm the oldest one here, so I can probably speak from a old age perspective. And I think the thing that probably means the most to me and what I think of every day and can sort of mourn about really is the things that Michael and I would have talked about, what our next dialogue would have been. And I really I treasure that in my mind, but it's, you know, it's the tragedy of the situation. But it's so interesting because in a sense, the coronavirus era has brought up an incredible new scenario of urban problems and possibilities and changes, and hopefully all for the better. And I'm sure, because Michael and I both spent most of our lives talking about the street and you know, the activity of the street and people's interaction and ecology and these aspects of the world, the built world. This would be an entirely different problem of where you have people in fear of congregating and people who have to congregate to even survive. And I think of all the discussions that we would have concerning that, and it just adds to the poignancy of this whole situation for me. I miss him terribly every day. As I say, I think about Michael literally every single day. But I think that the core of it all is basically what we would have said, what we would have talked about, what our next dialogue would be. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. June Williamson, are you online?
Yes, I am. Hi, thank you. Thank you, Dean and Vijayanti, and for organizing this. And Joan, my deepest condolences to you. I guess I want to speak a little bit. I'm a colleague, was a colleague at City College, but also was a student. And I know there's a lot of former students on the call here. I first became aware of Michael, I guess, when I was a very young student, and I was at MIT, and he was one of our most illustrious and provocative, that people have said, alums. I wrote it to him then as a student, and he submitted a piece to a journal I was editing. I brought students to his office when I was teaching in Utah, and then so there's this sort of back and forth of his generosity, and later I became a student, an older student, and I remember sitting on the couch of his City College office when he was encouraging me to be a student and reassuring me that we'd have a lot of fun, and we did. Sarah Herta was a classmate. We didn't all keep in touch, but we really had an amazing year. One of the things we went to and that year, Graham Shane taught us, Joan, class with Joan, and Marshall Berman, of course, was amazing. And we went to Hanoi. And actually, one of the things he had me commission a portrait of my then infant son. He's in high school now, but she's like, oh, go have the drawing made, the painting made. And that program, in some ways, oh, it's my son here, saved my life. And I don't speak about this often, but that year in the program helped pull me out of a postpartum depression and got my career back on track. And really, I owe a tremendous debt to Michael. And the last thing I want to mention, there's been talk about the use of the word comrade, and also the term, I guess he would use for the neighborhood, the NABE, thinking about the NABE and how we all, in a way, comprise layers and types of interlocking and layered NABEs with Michael, in which we've been neighbors. Thank you. I'll miss them a lot.
Thank you, June. Is Killian online?
I am here.
Great, Killian, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dean. Thanks so much, Vijayanti, everyone in Terraform, and Joan. We feel your pain, probably not as deeply as you, and thank you for this forum. I got to hear Michael in 2013 when I was at University of Florida as an undergrad. He was an introduction to a new kind of practice for me. At University of Florida, was very much a formalist education, and quite honestly discouraged sometimes politics. And his lecture single-handedly really changed the way I saw architecture and the pursuits and things I started looking at. I had the good fortune then later, about 10 years ago, when I left the GSD, to have become his friend, and I count him as a mentor. And since then, I'm gonna give three quick little vignettes of one of the things about knowing Michael was sometimes the contradictions. You know, at the the bar, we would go and have a whiskey. You would expect only radical thought, but what you really got was the kind of kindness that June just spoke about, and many of you have talked about. The kindness that would push you when you were in a funk, that would ask you to continue working while listening to you. In a couple of occasions, I got to be a substitute for him at his studio, in his urban design studio at City College. And in that opportunity, one of the things that I really learned from Michael was to really embrace the diversity of thought and design among students. And it's something that, quite honestly, someone with such a particular design sensibility, I may have expected wanting some sort of singular mode of working, but that was not Michael. Michael wanted the diversity and the many points of view to be talked about. And then finally, after the disaster of the 2016 election, He was asked to do an event in the at the Architecture Center. And instead of going up there and doing the event as had been planned, he called a whole bunch of radical architecture organizations, comrades, to come together. And that idea that he didn't have to do that, and he brought us all on stage to have a working session on how we were going to move forward under the new regime, and how we were going to organize, how we're going to move forward to change the world. I miss Michael. The news of his passing really has probably hit everyone really hard. It also sadly seems to coincide with the death of so many of the things that we all love in New York City, and so many things happening. But I think that what we're hearing here is that really it is obviously not that it's a call to action for all of us. I love this tribute, and I think one of the best tributes is to bring this group of people and friendly faces together to organize and move forward. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Killian. Fabian, did I call on you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Very, very short, and I would like to read something that I wrote. Well, thank you, Dean. Thank you, Vijayanti and John. I would like to, hope that very soon we will meet. And this is what I wrote. He was always ahead, faster than all of us. His generosity, infinite. Sometimes he will stop just to help us ride along with him. His wisdom, his provocations, and his wit as companions. He explained things to us, told us stories, wrote elegant paragraphs to us. So beautiful, it almost felt hurtful to leave them buried in an inbox, depriving a vaster audience of his enlightening words. I can say with profound pride and enormous sadness that I have witnessed his daily miracles. I can see him sitting in front of his laptop, sipping his unsweetened green tea, opera music playing in the background, his finger writing pure sharp beauty. Each paragraph was deep, smart, fun, and full of life. Each one of them stemmed from a powerful desire for a equitable society, for a kind humanity, for a better, more beautiful world. His voice was cracked. His word went fast. Maybe too fast for me to comprehend the full message of your dreams, Michael. And as usual, we did not have enough time. Now, more than ever, I will go for that ride once more, and I will try to follow those beautiful dreams of yours, whenever they may be. Nos vemos pronto, camarada. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fabian. Kent Hadika?
Yeah, hi, Kent Hikita. Joan, I love you and feel so much for you, your loss. Thank you so much for sharing Michael with us all. I had a relatively short period of time at the beginning with Michael. Actually, I was introduced to him by David Graham Shane at Bennington College, where I went to undergraduate school, and then re-met Michael in my last studio at Columbia in 1990. I worked for him from 1990 to about 1992, 1993. So it's my fault. My fault is all about the animal houses. So, dog, aardvark, fish, slug, sheep. Those are all my faults. Sorry. Michael, I've written about this before. He was my teacher. He was my mentor. He was my boss. He was my brother. He was my comrade in arms. He was my rabbi. Joan and Michael danced at my wedding, and I love him dearly. And I, by the way, I already drained my Negroni, but my daughter brought in a glass of wine for me to refill my cup. So I've lifted already my Negroni to Michael, and I lift again this glass of wine to him. I owe him I owe him a fucking Negroni. And I will get it to him at some point. But I love Michael more than anything. And I know how much he meant to all of us through the years. He will be missed, but his legacy will live on. And we will all carry on the mission. And heaven just got a hell of a lot weirder with Michael up there, man. Love you, Michael.
Thank you, Ken. Martha Gutman.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. So my husband, Gene, and I are getting sloshed, so you'll intribute to Michael, so perhaps you'll forgive this short piece I wrote. So it's a story this is a story I'd like to share with you, and it's about Michael as recruiter for City College. So after I'd finished my PhD, I was looking for a teaching job, and Michael reached out to me to urge me to apply for the position that was open at the architecture school at City. This was in 2003. I was living in Berkeley then, working on various postdocs, and we chatted. So we chatted first by email, and then we figured out a way to meet in person. I decided to come to New York to bring my kids to see their grandmother and their cousins and their aunt, the whole East Coast family. And on a blistering hot August day, I took them to Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty. Everyone wanted to be as close to the water as possible. And afterwards, I met Michael. It was hot, I was sticky. We were both wearing shorts and tank tops. This was hardly the getup for an interview. And he chose a coffee shop near Battery Park. And I suppose we talked about the job, but what I remember best is that Michael wanted to order me a slice of cherry pie. One for me, one for him. And I knew I should say yes, but I couldn't fathom eating a piece of pie in 95-degree heat, even in an air-conditioned coffee shop. So I declined. And I can still see the look of utter astonishment on the face across the table from me. No pie? Are you sure? He asked me again and again. And I thought for sure I'd blown it over a piece of pie. That was the end of my career as a historian. So the next day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, New York had a blackout. I couldn't even manage to reach out to Michael to say thank you. I had the wrong cell phone number, whatever. And so I really thought I was totally screwed. I made it back to Berkeley. I applied for the job. I interviewed, I was selected, and I accepted it. And we moved. And this person this ex-New Yorker who almost became a Californian, was able to recover her New York life and roots. Thank you, Michael Sorkin, for forgiving an uneaten slice of cherry pie. I treasure your enduring confidence in me, in my work, and I will always remember you, your faith in me, and the institution that we both love, the City College of New York. I just wish we could have found another time to share that piece of pie. To Michael.
Thank you very much. Hillary?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm going to try to be quick. I worked at Urban Research, the book side of Terraform, as an editor for a few years until last August when I left to go back to school. Even before Terraform, Michael had been in my orbit for most of my life. He'd been a close friend of my dad's. So when my interests and research started shifting away from art and into writing and urbanism, he was ecstatic and quickly adopted me into the Terraform family. As many of us here in this virtual space, Michael was a mentor to me and also one of my biggest supporters. Throughout my time at Terraform and after, Michael and I would exchange emails, catching each other up on missed gossip, as well as what we were each thinking and writing about. I've continued to write letters to Michael since his passing, filling him in on my life, the state of the world, the state of his favorite city, New York, in addition to my thoughts on the future of cities and how much the world could really use his mind and his voice right now. I'd like to share a quick excerpt from one of these letters. Dear Michael, I wish you were here to help us imagine a positive future for New York City and cities all around the world. Your utopian determination and optimism is so needed. Open, public, and communal spaces are now all considered health risks. The more walls between people, the better. The busy sidewalks, trains, and parks that used to identify New York City now need to be kept sparse. I worry about the lasting environmental and societal effects this will have. All attempts to go green seem to have been thrown out the window and onto the street. The sidewalks in my neighborhood have been so dirty with trash, and there are abandoned gloves and masks everywhere. The wealthy people have already fled the cities for more remote locations, and I'm concerned long-term social distancing regulations will result in a mass flight to suburbia. We need a voice for the cities right now, an advocate for the busy sidewalks. Sorry, it's really loud outside my apartment. Everyone's celebrating the weather. An advocate for the busy sidewalks, someone who is not afraid to stand up and shout that urban density is not to blame, and that together, not apart, we can get through this. More than ever, people need to learn to live together socially and communally. This has been your battle cry for years, but tragically, you're no longer here to lead us. It is difficult, but rather than continuing to lament what has been lost, I'm trying to focus my energy on picking up where you left off. Michael's voice and mind may be needed now more than ever, but it is up to us, his friends, family, mentees, students, colleagues, to keep his vision alive. New York City and all of us have suffered a huge loss, but because of this loss and the global crisis, we must carry Michael in our hearts and minds and continue to fight hard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hilary. G?
Hi, this is Jie. It's very happy to see many faces like Ying, Zhen, Jose, Maria. I can't count all the people, but I'm so happy to see you, come back to studio. Yeah, actually, I worked with Michael and until he leave us. I still remember his last call me. He said he not feeling well, and he said I will come back tomorrow to studio. Come back tomorrow to studio, and that's the last conversation I had with him. I still seeing him all time. I have dreams. I have dreamed of him, and one of the latest dream, he come back from the hospital, and he said he's okay. And I was very, I don't know, it's very unusual feeling. I told him I will go back to studio to work, and he said, "Don't. Let me show you some architectures." It feels very real, it's very warm. The color is like a yellowish and warm color. Yeah, I just want to say I will, Michael also sent me his last email and gave me a lot of assignments. I need me to finish this, finish that, like, who Chinese client own his money, many things I have to do. I have still to finish that. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, G. Leslie, do you want to say something?
I hope there's no other Leslie on the call. Just to say thank you to everyone for giving me the chance to speak very briefly. Out of everyone here, I think I probably knew Michael the least. I met him once about 10 years ago for 10 minutes and never spoke to him again until last year, sitting in Johannesburg after having withdrawn from the search for a new dean at City. And Tao, a mutual friend of ours, rang me to say that Michael Sorkin wanted to talk to me. And 10 minutes later, and somehow it's always been in these 10s, I emailed the head of the search committee and asked to be reinstated. So I'm here today because of him. But although I barely knew him personally, I'm so grateful that I'm able to get to know him through Joan and the literally hundreds of people who are both here on this tribute and beyond. And I'm grateful too that I'm able to get to know him through the project of his archive that Joan has so generously donated to the school. Together with Elisabetta and Fabian and others, we're working on bringing his work to rest at Spitzer, which I know will be both the beginning of something special, but also the future of it. And the more I understand about the school and its context, the deeper my admiration for him grows and the more profoundly I feel the loss. So thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Vanessa?
Hi, everyone. This is all very moving, and I'm so glad to be here with you, with all of you. I don't know how to explain, but I'll just sort of try. I met Michael, I guess, in 2001 or something like that, and he's the reason I ended up starting to teach at City College as an adjunct. I met him actually working on the School of Architecture for Vignoli, and I remember the meetings with, the two of us would go up there and we would get like slammed by all the architects. I mean, it was like presenting an architecture school to a bunch of architects. And Michael always had a way of sort of breaking the tension in the room and of contributing, everyone has talked about his wit and how wonderful he was. I remember getting invited to his juries, and those were such a treat and so alive and so imaginative. And, for me as somebody who, I never fit anywhere. I mean, I'm Italian, Jamaican, Chinese, never fit anywhere. Grew up playing class struggle in secret with my Marxist parents and feeling like I had to hide my belief that the world could be better and that we could do something, we could change this. And so meeting somebody who was just unabashedly himself and the values that he had and the sense that architecture could be about something, that we could do something, that we could make change. This is like, we don't have to just accept the world the way it is, and it could always be better, was so revolutionary and life-changing for me. He was always up for coming to the office. We would have like these reviews in the summer and everybody would come and it would just be so fun and such a treat, and that's how I ended up doing my book, 2100. And it was so great to work on that with him. And, he always pushed for more. And, his critiques were always like, pretty tough, but also humorous. I mean, I remember one thing at one point we had like this idea that we were going to move everybody around the world and there was going to be some sort of like middle zone before you got to where you were really going. And he said, what is that, like a holiday in Auschwitz? And we joked about making t-shirts with that. And I was like, okay, so that idea was completely gone. But having the opportunity to work on that with him and having the opportunity to then, be able to, have him as a mentor, which is what I really was looking for when I came to New York. I feel so honored by that. And I feel that I found my community in all of you. We are we're a group, right? We're a sort of a hive mind of these ideas about how we can make the world a better place. And I don't want that to die. I was completely crushed and destroyed when I heard what happened to Michael, because I just thought there's so much shittier people in the world. Why did it have to be him? And I know that that's like a terrible thing to say, but he never was one for compliments. Whenever I would try to thank him, he would shut me up. But I just want to say, Michael, thank you so much for everything you did for me, and you changed my life. And let's keep pressing on, and let's do more, and let's make the world a better place. And I'm not going to give up on cities. I'm not going to give up on New York, and I'm still here because of you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Vanessa. Anna Maria?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you see me? Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. I don't know where to start. I didn't write anything. I tend not to. I'm Latina. So I'll be spontaneous about this. Can you see my screen right now? Because I can't. No? Share screen? Oh, I think I'm disabled. Would you mind disabling me?
Sarah, can you make Anna a co-host?
I appear as Ana Duran. And I guess that in the meanwhile, I'll just start.
Now you should be able to.
Should I be able to now?
Yeah.
Is it there? Share screen. Share. Oh my God, and it is not open. Just my messy. Oh, there it is. Okay. I met Michael in the year 2004 when I was curating the Quito Biennale. And I wanted to bring the focus to the Global South back then. A Planet of Slums was probably being written by one of Michael's best friends, Mike Davis. And undergoing architecture school with Vanessa, who's a dear friend of mine, at UPenn, I was pretty shocked that the Global South was invisible, completely absent from studios, teaching, and any form of conversation at the university. So when I went back to Ecuador, I wanted to change that, and we call the Biennale the Visible Cities, playing upon with the invisible cities, obviously, of Calvino, but sort of to say, you know what, there are huge slums in the planet. Why is not anyone talking about it? And Michael is one of the persons one of the architects that I thought he has to be part of this. Moji Baradlu, a common friend of ours, who would be here right now if she were still around, introduced me to Michael, and we met in New York for lunch. And my goal was to get Michael to say, yes, I'll come to the Quito Biennale. And I'm very insecure coming from the Global South. I'm thinking, he's too famous. He's not going to have the time. He's not going to come, but I'll give it a shot. In the end, we ended up talking for like 3 hours. I was completely shocked by Michael. He knew about Amazonia. We started talking about the Amazon, and he knew so much. I couldn't believe a gringo knew so much about the greatest watershed in the world. And we ended up talking about the movies by Herzog and all sorts of details. And he said to me by the end of lunch, but what about, not just coming for the Quito Biennale? What if I join forces with you and we do a whole studio on the oil cities of Ecuador that you're so concerned about? And that's how he ended up dedicating 1 or 2 years of his life to Lago Agrio, which is a tiny little town in the Ecuadorian Amazon that nobody really cares that much about. And it's the product of Texaco Chevron's extractive oil extraction activities in the region. And I remember Michael sent me this after we did the trip. He came to the Architecture Biennale. He gave a superb lecture. Everybody loved it. And then we took a bus with his students from City College. He got all the funding and came with a group from landscape architecture, a group from urban design, obviously, and planning, and another group from the architecture school. He had a huge body of comrades coming to South America to look at what was going on there and to develop a scheme for this tiny little municipality in the jungle. And when he came back to New York, already in New York in 2007, this is 1 year after the Biennale, he wrote this article for the architectural record. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I can't believe this immense human being cares so much for this little city in the Ecuadorian Amazon. And not only did he devote 2 years of City College life to this city, and he invested another 2 or 3, and Trudy can attest to this, putting this book together. And he created this incredible design in which he wanted to weave again, like he always did, agroecology with the forest and with the urban, which he never conceived as opposing or antagonistic forces, but as friendships that could thrive, in these webs of life and these webs of friendship and kinship that Michael always created. And, I remember one of the stories that really marked me about Michael is that when he did all this work, I mean, him and his office, I barely wrote an essay for this book and, and another little piece that he really pushed me to write. And in the end, he ended up inserting me as editor, and I was completely shocked. Michael couldn't stand dispossession, and he couldn't stand the dispossession of cities. He couldn't stand the dispossession of the landscapes. He couldn't stand the dispossession of women, I must say. And many of us are here, to thank him for that. And I do think that was because Joanne's spirit was always with him. So I want to thank you for that as well. And when he put my name as an editor, I was like, Michael, I was not used to that kind of treatment, but exactly the opposite. It's like, I haven't done much. I don't think you should credit me so much. You know, it's okay. You're the editor and my name doesn't need to be there. And he insisted. He's like, no, I want to put your name. These, you know, stem from our conversation, stem from your concerns, and I want to give you due credit. I was completely shocked. And that's Michael. That is his generosity. That is the way he just gives so much more. And I'm indebted to him in that regard. My balance is definitely off with him, you know, holding the greatest weight in terms of what was given. And this is Michael, you know, during the editing process of that book. I was very slow. I had just had a child. I wasn't finishing, wrapping up my part of the work. So he was like, you know, him and Trudy, just come to New York, come to the office, we'll help you. I was at the time teaching at the GSD, so I would just take a train from Boston and go to New York. And this is my daughter in Michael's office. She had her own little computer to play with, and she loved the Coke airplane that I know was somehow related to the movie The Gods Must Be Crazy, which I absolutely loved. I couldn't believe that was in the office of an architect and an urbanist. And Sita had a blast, and you know, Michael just welcomed her to be part of the team. And had he not been so embracing of my limitations, if you wish, as a woman, I don't think we would have ever finished the book. So that's one of the many, many things that I have to thank Michael for. He was always unconditional. He always came to Ecuador. Whenever we called him, he was there in the South. You know, he never got paid an honorarium. He barely got the tickets, and he was there. And this is later when he came to another seminar that I was organizing on a knowledge city called Yachaytec in a beautiful valley in Ecuador that was being completely destroyed in the name of this like knowledge/industrial city inspired on Incheon. And again, Michael, you know, the hurricane starts thinking, oh my God, no, this is too important. We have to do a studio on this. We have to do something about it. And another 2 years of the, you know, City University of New York go to Ecuador and to rethinking the global South. And then for another 2 years, he pushed me to write this essay that I would not have written had Michael not really, really emailed me every 2 weeks to ask me, are you done? And, you know, this is just a snippet of how much I have to thank Michael for. He's really pushed me to be more than I am. He's really given me the pleasure of caring, not just for big megalopolises like New York, but for tiny little oil towns like Lago Agrio. Michael is a truly post-colonial spirit. And you see that in everything he did, the way he treated women, the way he treated the land, the way he treated cities, the way he engaged politics. He was incredibly special. He was a big lesson. And in this same line, I remember once, at the, you know, when we were starting to do the Lago Agrio studio, I came to the US and I went to the reviews at City College. I never know whether City University, City College. I keep on changing the names. But I remember I told Michael in shock, you know, so superficial of me to have asked this question, but I said to him, Michael, you are so famous. You could be in any university in the world. May I ask why you are here? And he looked at me and he said, this is where I'm most useful. This is where I have to be if I want to be coherent with my thought. This is where the Hispanic migrants whose parents never got a chance to study art, Ana Maria. And I was like, oh my God, it was a life-changing experience. I realized that, yeah, Michael taught me many lessons, and they were about being consistent, and they were strongly not just about the big, but about the small, and they were strongly about weaving the cracks that have divided the world. One of the greatest ones has divided North and South along the Rio Grande. And Michael is one of those people in the North that really makes it possible for us to think about Pan America as a unity and not as a polarized region of dominance and exploitation. He really, really is one of those human beings who works in the right direction. And I will make sure that I keep his legacy alive in Latin America. Latin Americans adore Michael Sorkin, and they will continue to do so So thank you, Michael, for weaving these two pieces together.
Thank you, Anna, for that. And to keep on this theme, I will pass it to Salim Al-Qudwa.
Can you see me, please? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see and hear you.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I met Michael only one time in 2015 when Abe Hayim, Nasser Gulzari, and Yara Sharif introduced my work to him. I also had the pleasure to present my work in Palestine, in Gaza Strip, to him and to other respected professionals in the first Open Gaza conference, which took place at the University of Westminster in London. It was November 2015. In 2016, Michael invited me to write a chapter in his volume, Open Gaza. Since then, we kept collaborating as a team of architects, planners, and contributors for the Open Gaza book, thanks to Dean and for the rest of the team as well. I also connected him with Dr. Sarah Roy from Harvard, who turned to write the introduction for the book. In 2020, Michael was happy that I moved from Palestine to the United States with my family, and he even invited me to his studio in New York to discuss my future. He also offered to write some recommendation letters. He was a great supporter, actually. I kept it a surprise for him. I didn't tell him that I got an offer from Harvard to be a fellow during the next academic year. I preferred to tell him that thing in person when I was planning to meet him during the spring, face to face, and to see his charming smile and sparkling eyes, a meeting that will not happen anymore. It's quite difficult to talk on behalf of the 2 million people who have been locked down in Gaza since the last 13 or 14 years. So thank you, Michael. Thank you for your efforts to unlock Gaza and to open Gaza. I think that will not be forgotten by the Palestinian people over there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salim. Maria?
Thank you, Dee, so much. And right after I hung up with Denise that day, and we learned that Michael went into a new trip, to a new exploration. I didn't know what to do. So I watched his lecture, his last lecture at Manitoba. And again, there he was, the role model educator, and told me one more lesson: write your speech. So after weeks, I wrote my students in their final review that none of this has been easy, that we have experienced loss together, and anxiety for our friends and family getting sick and going away. I told them that my dearest friend, Michael Sorkin, has gone away, and that I've been thinking how he used to say that one must prepare always the script, like in the theater, you know. So in his memory, there I was for the first time, me, a completely unprepared Latin American, reading from a prepared paper. And here I am today, trying to do the same. In times of discrimination, Michael fought for diversity. In times of violence, he fought for peace. In times of disempowered women, he gave women a voice. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for helping me finding my voice and standing in my own 2 feet. We met in Costa Rica with Professor, this is hard, with Dana and Jose and Anna and everybody. And months after, we were in China with Jie. I was terrified because other corporative teams had a lot of bling, you know, the night before the presentation. And Michael turned around and said, "Don't worry, Maria. We don't win with bling. We win with ideas." So off we went to get some rest before the big presentation. Right before we walked in to a room full with male Chinese officials, I was terrified again. And Michael looked at me and said, "Fierce. Fierce we will be, Michael." And he told me about the valley in Ecuador and how we should do a studio together. So we will do that, Michael. Michael is beloved in Latin America. Michael, Venezuela loves you. And we will climb that spiral up of the helicoide. And we will make it a place for imagination, freedom, and love that you wanted it to be. I hope we will all meet there again to cheer for him over and over and over again.
Thank you very much, Miriam. If anyone has put the case for planetary urbanization, I think it's Michael, with this incredible reach that he had. Vineet.
Thanks, team. Joan, I just want to share my condolences with you. I had emailed Michael the day before he passed, and I don't know what had crossed my mind, but my wife and I thought, oh, you know, Michael's likely going to try and go to the studio. Maybe there's a way to prevent him. Maybe he'll let me get groceries for him or something so he can work from home. And, you know, the email never got a reply. And the next day, you know, I said something is strange. Michael usually fires back a one-word or two-word reply within seconds of my. And, I was able to catch up with Vaijanti, and she shared the news. You know, I learned about Michael in my undergraduate studies in 2001. You know, there was a lot of noise and ideology where I went to school, and I read Variations on a Theme Park. And I thought, you know, I can hear that voice. That's a voice I can trust. You know, I don't really care what the cornice of that building looks like. I don't care what color it is. I don't care who said what, but I can trust that person's voice and question he's asking. And that helped me get through school. You know, voices like that, you know, Teddy Cruz is on, Teddy's voice, Mike Davis's voice, you know, and later a lot of the people who've been affiliated with Terraforming UR. You know, the first time we met, I remember Vaijanti commenting, you know, we were going to a Chinese restaurant down the street from 180 Varick, and she said, you know, he's one of the few people I've met that seems to have 4 brains operating simultaneously. And it's just, you know, it was something I think in those first few months of getting to know him, just trying to keep up, to read the references that he would throw at me, to follow the conversation, and to come back feeling like I could, you know, be prepared to keep the conversation going. You know, over the next 7 years, I think the qualities I came to look forward to when I approached the building and we built the elevator to Terraform's office was the aliveness. You know, his eyes would always be there quick, and then, you know, he would walk out of the office and say a few kind words, and a few jokes would come out, and I would feel at ease, and we would start talking about the book project that Vaijanti and I were working on. You know, he gave us a title for it that we were struggling with. And I think a lot of encouragement when, you know, a lot of changes for me transitioning out of being a grad student into practice and trying to struggle to keep up with my day job and also with the research. And every time I would come to visit him, there would be an encouraging smile, comments on each chapter. The last time we met in February to go through the most recent draft, you know, we had coffee, and he was encouraged by the progress, and it gave me some strength to go back and say, okay, you know what? This is going to be the month or the few months that I can push through and get this chapter done. And maybe we can bring it back to him in April and May and June and finish the thing off. And you know, that quality is something that I feel is so lacking in other quarters in life, but it's something I could depend on Michael to provide, either from a distance through a book or a lecture, or up close being in the room with him and talking about you know, steady state and the food book, which I remember Dean and a few other people with us meeting in February to talk through the next iteration of it. You know, I'm just grateful for that presence. And Joan, you know, I think every time I got to spend time with him, especially in the evenings or on a weekend, you know, I would think of you and think of your generosity as well. You know, to let Michael's aliveness kind of be shared with all of us. And so I wanted to thank you, and just wanted you to know that I'm here. I think all of us are here to do whatever you know, his bidding and yours is, you know, with the future. So thanks, team.
Thank you, Vinny. Rafi, have you left us? Yeah, I think you have. Einat. Hi, Anna. Oh, Anna, have you left? Just saw you.
Hello. Yeah.
Oh, no,
Okay. Sorry, I had to unmute. Oh, thank you, and everyone, and Dean and Terraform and Vijayanthi for doing this. It's so heartwarming to be with you all, and sad and touching and inspiring. Thank you, Joan. Let us be your family, holding you in this in any way we can. Over the past couple, I was a student of Michael's in 2006. I came from Israel, Palestine to New York, and then our class went to New Orleans post Katrina, and it was a transformative experience. One that made me link the thinking about the Palestinian right of return with New Orleanians' right of return, and afterwards, 10 years later, I had the absolute honor to teach the MUD students in the program for 4 years. And there's so many things, as you all said, such an exceptional teacher and mentor and friend. And his teachings, frankly, echo in my mind and heart frequently. And in thinking, I would like to share maybe 3 vignettes with you all. The first one is that in 2006, I co-organized a symposium with Michael, and I was worried about our limited time and space and about choosing between the many entries we were receiving. Michael responded, Einat, you can't have too many good people doing too many good things. And this statement, I believe, encapsulates the all-inclusiveness and generosity behind his urban research, his collaborations and teaching, and I can see his legacy in Terraform and in all of you. And so I appreciate that a lot. Second, he radically trusted his students. When teaching at the MUD program, I often brought up French philosopher Jacques Rancière in thinking of Michael's pedagogy. Rancière offers this idea that teaching towards liberation must assume an a priori prerequisite, almost an equal propensity for learning, what Rancière termed an intellectual emancipation. And time again, I have seen Michael trust his students of multiple cultural and disciplinary backgrounds so profoundly in a way that rendered old models of teaching and thinking of urbanism redundant and allowed for radical work to appear. Also, a note to students and myself, I would always tell them that after a visit with Michael in his studio, they should always take the local train home. The much needed long subway ride from Barrack Street to Harlem can be used to process and get all his jokes. He was very serious about being funny. And the third one is sort of in closing, but definitely not the only one, is a couple of days in 2015, a couple of days after my daughter was born, Michael wrote to say congratulations, and then how early can 2 of you come for a martini and resume planning the revolution? He then followed that email with another asking whether my 2-day-old baby was a 2 martini or 3 martini kind of girl. I then learned it is never too early or too late to resume both drinking and revolutionary work. And so, Michael, I miss you, and we'll have a drink in your honor and some wiggle and resume the revolutionary work in your honor.
Thank you, Anna. Naomi Davis.
I am.
Hi, Naomi. Over to you.
Oh, there you are. Hey, everybody. Thank you. I am shocked that I think many of you are from this, and rightly so, this international architectural intellectual community, and I'm a girl here on the south side of Chicago who had a dream about a way for African-American families to build community wealth and experience belonging in place and experiencing dignity, sovereignty, and a connection back to our earth in ways that my mom, for anyone who knows the stuff that I do, I often introduce myself as I'm Naomi Davis and I come from White Gloves and Mud, the proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers. And so when I first met Michael, he had approached me to participate in a panel that he was putting together here on the South Side, where he was, as some of you know, writing for a long time, and hopefully we'll finish it together, South Side Stories, and where he submitted his, as he liked to call it, his amicus curiae brief on the Obama Presidential Center many years ago, and where he just embraced with just full frontal love the idea of what Blacks in Green was trying to do with the gutting of the gutting of our community. We're down here in Woodlawn, right next door to the University of Chicago, in what we have come to call the Obama Presidential District. And I had no idea who Michael was, and I think that it's just, to hear all of these love letters to Michael, it's like I didn't even realize I knew for sure he loved Joan, but I didn't know he loved anyone like he loved me, because he gave so much. He spent so much of the top of the cream of what he had to give on helping our small nonprofit realize something that mattered so deeply for system change. And that was to find a model for housing development that could build a wealth and belonging like when I grew up in St. Albans, Queens. And so I want to do a screen share for those of you who have not seen House's Garden. And let's see. Host disabled participants, screen sharing. May I be permitted, please?
I just made you. You should be able to share now.
Okay. In point of fact, we worked together for 3 years, and there were other architects and other renderings, and the idea that that there could be our idea was an owner-occupied 4-flat. And for those of you who are in different parts of the world for whom that concept it just means that it's a building with 4 units in it. And in Chicago anyway, a 4-unit is the maximum number of units you can have in what's considered a personal dwelling. Larger than that, and it's considered commercial, and it has different, tax implications and all of that. So, so the idea that you could live in a place, but also provide affordable housing. I don't even like to use that phrase, because who doesn't want housing that's affordable to the people who live in a place? It's a ridiculous construct, and don't get me started about tax credit housing and all of that. But the idea that he got it immediately. There was no question. And for 3 years, we worked through different iterations, and he sent me the last. We never got MEPs. That's what I'm just learning about mechanicals, engineers, and plumbing. But he sent this raft of renderings, and G and Vacanti, people that I only knew by email, lexicon, have since then become so real to me, because you know, they were my lifeline to this man that who had just anchored himself. I mean, he had just anchored himself, and I, you know, I won't go on with the stories because all of you have apparently, you know, been loved in that way. And I'm, you know, let's see if I can get my screen here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Well, where's my? So there it is. House's Garden. Michael understood that we were, Michael understood that, so you can't tell that that's like 2 4-flats, right? And what we were designing for a city of Chicago triple lot space that Blacks in Green was able to acquire, and on which 5 years ago we started a fruit and nut orchard. And the idea was like, and everyone would like come by and they'd be like, well, why is only half of your parcel planted? And I was like, well, that's the other half was where the 4-flats are going. And to be able to say that, and for those of you who for whatever reason may have read the Lafarge Folsom award application that he filed, he just told a beautiful story about how, and it was like he was talking with my voice that, you know, modest income and poor people, and the least of these, our brethren, they deserve beautiful places to live too. And we at Blacks in Green are living at the, working at the intersection of environment and economy. And we understood the idea of how important it was to be getting up in the land and touching the dirt and growing. And so, you know, the couple of weeks before his way untimely death, he, you know, he sent me this email. He says, you know, here it goes, cuz, you know, this is $100,000 worth of work. Let's get this thing built. Let's do it. Come on now. And so, you know, my commitment is that we do get it built, is that we do find a way to honor his magnificent generosity and his total soulful understanding of the humanity of people and their desire to live in beauty with dignity. And Ellen Grimes, who some of you may know, who's my compadre here in Chicago. So I just want to say to all of you that I get it, that I wasn't the only person that he loved. And his love is all the more rich for me that he loved so many of you all so well. Get with us if you care to understand what great things are possible here in Chicago. What great things are here in Chicago because Michael got it.
Thank you, Naomi. Can we go to Nadia?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to send all my love to the Terraform family and to Joan for the loss of Michael. I met Michael about 3 years ago, and I cried before I met him. I had no confidence in myself and my work. And you know what, like, he never broke his students down. He always would try help every individual be the best version, of themselves. And I can never thank him enough for how he helped me grow as a designer. And I honestly aspire to everything and everything he stood for. And yeah, I'm sending so much love to all of you right now. And thank you for organizing this whole thing. But yeah, I was petrified before I met him. I actually didn't know that much of Michael. And I mean, he knows how to build up students, like, and he approaches things with so much kindness and empathy, and throws in his little pinch of sass. That, I mean, I go back to chains and chains of emails of the banter, and I can still feel him here everywhere. And I urge all of us to just keep his legacy going, and he will always be around. And I wonder what he is judging up in heaven, and what his approach to everything is. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Elisa?
I would love to tell you something glorious or something special like everybody, but I would like to share 2 failures that we encountered with Michael recently. Last December, I got the opportunity to be invited in a competition in Ticino, Switzerland. They asked for a radical project and there were a lot of money. So I thought Michael is the perfect person to do it. So I went to the office, and we went there, and we realized that it was not so easy to get in because, you know, they tried to create a series of bureaucratic barriers that we went crazy. It was almost impossible. I had to say that I hate to waste time, but there was a special pleasure to be into his box, into his glass box with him for a while. Because when you exit, people look at you you reach a certain status and importance. It depends how much time you spent into the box. So I had to say that we failed. We couldn't get in. But it was not only my fault. It was also his fault. He was not focused. He was interested to talk to me also for another reason. He was planning a trip to Italy this summer with John. And he pretended that she didn't know anything and he need to have some input from me. So he asked me to do a list of sites and special places to go. The next time I went to the office, I went with a long list and it took me a while to put it together, special places. He looked at the list and she told me, come on, this stuff I can get it from internet. I need something for her to be together in special places, where to drink wine, where to get good food. Come on, this is not what I'm looking for. So I failed for the second time in a row. I have to tell you, I think I can fail only 2 times, not the third. The third mission, I will not fail. And the mission is to take care of his archives and his legacy together with Leslie in our school. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elisa. Supriya?
Hi. Hey. Everyone was talking about what they're drinking. I made sure I made the fruitiest cocktail possible because Michael did not approve of my drinking habits at all. And I still hate martinis. I'm just gonna read this thing. The day Michael died was the first time he didn't respond to my email. But I think I let him get away with that one. For the last 3 years, I've repeatedly emailed him, called him, waved my arms outside his glass office door, and rarely bothered to knock before assailing him with questions. Michael made it easy to do that. Welcoming, caring, and filled with knowledge about every single subject on the planet, Michael always made time for people, even misguided aspiring radicals. I was his comrade. We were all his comrades. As an overconfident 20-year-old, I read The Ends of Urban Design in a class. Intrigued and fired up, I found his office's phone number on the internet and called it. Michael answered the phone, and arrogant little me told him that I wanted to work for him. I'm still amazed by how nice he was on the phone. He invited me into the office for a chat and offered me a job at Terraform. That's who Michael was, warm, encouraging, and an incredible mentor. Michael never responded to my last email, but I feel like that hasn't completely registered yet. I still find myself almost writing to him every time I read something interesting or absurd or both. I still unconsciously reach for my phone every time I have a question about work or design or the establishment. But simply I miss him.
How's the computer now?
Sorry? Hello? I obsessively read and reread his writings, which makes it very hard to be sad. He was hilarious, insightful, inspiring. He makes me want to laugh and fight and celebrate the gift that was Michael. The last time I met him in person was on Joan's birthday. I dropped into the office unannounced during the day and was greeted with a bright smile and a huge hug. Michael was very excited about the dinner he was taking Joan to. When we discussed the Amtrak from Boston to New York, he told me that he called Joan, whom he loved deeply, the Mussolini of the quiet car. That was funny and strange. As I sat on that couch, and I think about how many hours I spent on that couch, we joked about what was then a strange virus in China. It's horrifying to think about the ease with which we dismissed it that day. And then we discussed overthrowing the GSD's administration, which was one of his favorite topics, and mine too. And then I left, and I promised to be back to meet him very soon so that we could continue our conversation. We will meet again, and we will finish our conversation. Until then, vive la révolution, camarade. We will keep fighting for a better world. And thank you for everything, to everyone on this call as well.
Thank you, Supriya. Jaspreet, I just saw that you, Jaspreet, do you want to say something? Okay. I was going to finish tonight with one of my favorite videos that I've found when I've been researching, various videos to show people of Michael and so on. So I'm going to let Michael take us to the end. And this is a talk that he's giving at a roundabout in Amman on, of course, his favorite topic of the right to the city and walking in the city. So over to you, Michael.
It may have been explained that I had just written a book about walking in New York. It's almost 20 years of walking. Down New York. I do this every day, and it is one of the most important parts of my life. And I'm absolutely thrilled to see this crowd out here to take a walk. I was just saying to our comrade here that I've come back from Dubai, and you are legendary. Everybody said, oh, you're going to Jordan to walk. That's fantastic. I think walking is very important in the city. Thank you, madam. I think walking is very important in the city for a number of reasons. One of which
Dean?
Yeah, we can't hear.
I don't know if he put the video on full screen and muted something. I'm not sure what's going on exactly.
Space that is provided for the walk. And your struggle is to reverse this balance. In New York, I am arguing all the time that we have vast excess of automobile space. And that one of the things that I'm constantly suggesting is, why don't we just arbitrarily say, we are going to take 50% of the automobile space and give it to the people. So you're walking in the street and don't stay on the sidewalk, for God's sake. Assert your rights to the street. And you will rebalance this city in favor of your life on feet. I would generalize even more. I've not been much in Amman, but I've been in many cities in the Middle East. And the genius of the morphology of Islamic cities in particular is that they are cities of walkers. The glories of the architecture of the Islamic world are the souks, the narrow lanes, the complexity, these places which produce sociability, accident, random encounters, intimate relations with merchants. You know, my wife, who has lived in the same miserable apartment with me for over 25 years, wants to move. And I am saying to her, yes, honey, I am willing to move, but I will not move more than 5 blocks from where we live, because the intimate relationships that I have with the dry cleaner and the news dealer and the owner of the cafe and the man in the drugstore, these are the substance of what it means to be an urbanist. And only by encountering them on a daily basis, seeing the changes, being there on foot, not whizzing by in the automobile, can we have truly beautiful, just, and humane cities. And I want to congratulate you and you for this dramatic.
Didn't I just give you something?
No, you didn't.
What's this?
Oh,
Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, everyone. It's been wonderful to share these moments. And Michael, we love you. We miss you. We will carry on your work and your legacy, and love to everyone. Thank you.
It wasn't a government that sounded the alarm on COVID-19. It was a person, the Chinese doctor and whistleblower Li Wenliang.